Welcome back to another story on Infidelity Tales Lab. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1, The First Warning. Tyler Moss had always prided himself on being prepared for anything. At 34, the former Marine turned cybersecurity consultant had built a comfortable life in the quiet suburban neighborhood of Millbrook Heights. His two-story colonial home, complete with a perfectly manicured lawn and white picket fence, was everything he dreamed of during those long nights in Afghanistan. More importantly, it was where he'd built a sanctuary for his wife Megan and their 8-year-old daughter Emma. The Ring doorbell had been Megan's idea, a practical addition after a string of package thefts in their neighborhood. Tyler had installed it himself 3 months ago, taking satisfaction in the clean wiring job and perfect camera angle. Technology was supposed to make life easier, safer. He never imagined it would become the source of their nightmare. The first incident happened on a Tuesday night in October. Tyler jolted awake at 3:17 a.m. to the familiar chime of the doorbell notification on his phone. Groggy and confused, he glanced at the screen, expecting to see a raccoon or perhaps a late-night delivery. Instead, the feed showed nothing but static, a writhing mass of digital distortion that made his eyes water. "What the hell?" he muttered, careful not to wake Megan, who was sleeping soundly beside him. He slipped out of bed and padded downstairs, his bare feet silent on the hardwood floors, old habits from his military days. Peering through the front window, he saw nothing unusual. The street was empty, bathed in the amber glow of streetlights. No cars, no people, no signs of disturbance. Tyler checked the doorbell's live feed again. Crystal clear. Whatever had triggered the alert was gone, leaving behind only questions and a lingering sense of unease. He made a mental note to check the device's sensitivity settings in the morning and return to bed. But sleep didn't come easily. Something about the static bothered him. It wasn't random digital noise. There had been patterns in it, almost like shapes. Faces, maybe. Tyler shook his head, attributing the thought to his half-awake state. He'd seen enough real horrors during his 3 tours overseas. His imagination didn't need to manufacture new ones. The next morning, over coffee and Emma's chatter about her upcoming school play, Tyler mentioned the incident to Megan. His wife, a pediatric nurse with practical sensibilities, simply shrugged. "Probably just a bug flying too close to the camera," she said, buttering Emma's toast. "These smart devices glitch all the time. Remember when our Alexa started ordering dog food, even though we don't have a dog?" Tyler nodded, wanting to believe her explanation. But as a cybersecurity expert, he knew technology didn't just glitch without reason. Every system failure had a cause, whether it was hardware malfunction, software corruption, or external interference. He made another mental note to run a full diagnostic on their home network. The second incident occurred exactly 24 hours later, same time, 3:17 a.m. This time, Tyler was ready. He'd positioned his laptop on the nightstand, connected to the home security system he'd installed throughout the house. When the doorbell chimed, he was instantly alert, his military training kicking in. The Ring feed showed the same writhing static, but now Tyler was recording everything. He switched to the other cameras, the one covering the backyard, the ones monitoring the side passages, the discrete indoor cameras in the hallways. All showed normal feeds. Whatever was affecting the doorbell camera was isolated to that single device. Tyler grabbed his Sig Sauer P365 from a nightstand safe and moved through the house with practiced stealth. He'd cleared buildings in Kabul. His own home was child's play. Every room was empty, every entrance secure. Outside, the neighborhood slept peacefully. Yet the doorbell continued to show that disturbing static for exactly 3 minutes and 47 seconds before returning to normal. Back in his home office, Tyler analyzed the recorded footage on his high-end workstation. Frame by frame, he studied the distortion, applying various filters and enhancement algorithms he'd learned during his cybersecurity work. What he found made his blood run cold. Hidden in the static, barely visible even with enhancement, were deliberate patterns. Not faces as he'd initially thought, but symbols, geometric shapes that seemed to shift and change with each frame. And underneath it all, almost imperceptible, was a faint audio signature, whispers in a frequency just below normal human hearing. Tyler had seen psychological warfare before. He'd studied techniques used by hostile intelligence agencies to break down targets mentally before physical confrontation. This had all the hallmarks of a sophisticated operation designed to create fear, paranoia, and sleep deprivation. Someone was targeting his family, and they were using advanced technology to do it. But who and why? Tyler's mind raced through possibilities. His cybersecurity work had made him enemies, corporate espionage cases where he'd exposed insider threats, government contracts where he'd identified foreign infiltration attempts. His military service had also left him with a list of potential adversaries, though most were either dead or imprisoned. The third night, Tyler was ready with more than just observation equipment. He'd spent the day researching counter-surveillance techniques and acquiring additional hardware. Motion sensors with infrared capability were positioned around the property's perimeter. High-resolution night vision cameras with local storage were installed in strategic locations. Most importantly, he'd set up a signal analysis station that would capture and analyze any electronic emissions in the area. At 3:17 a.m., the doorbell chimed again. But this time, Tyler's enhanced surveillance system captured something the original Ring camera had missed: a brief electromagnetic signature consistent with a high-power transmitter located approximately 300 yards southeast of his house. The signal lasted exactly as long as the static distortion on his doorbell camera. Tyler smiled grimly. His unknown enemy had just made their first mistake. In trying to terrorize him with ghost stories and digital phantoms, they'd revealed themselves as flesh and blood adversaries using real-world technology. And flesh and blood adversaries could be tracked, identified, and eliminated. As dawn broke over Millbrook Heights, Tyler began planning his counterattack. He'd protected his country from enemies abroad for years. Now he would protect his family from enemies at home. And unlike his previous tours of duty, this time there would be no rules of engagement to limit his response. The war for his family's safety had begun, and Tyler Moss intended to win it. Chapter 2. Digital Hunting. The next morning, Tyler sent Megan and Emma to stay with her sister in Connecticut for a long weekend. He fabricated a story about a gas leak requiring professional inspection, hating the lie, but knowing his family's safety came first. With them gone, he could focus entirely on identifying his adversaries without risking collateral damage. Tyler's home office transformed into a military command center. Multiple monitors displayed feeds from his expanded camera network, while sophisticated signal analysis equipment hummed quietly in the corner. His military and cybersecurity contacts had provided additional resources: thermal imaging cameras, electronic countermeasures equipment, and access to various government databases that officially didn't exist. The property 300 yards southeast turned out to be a foreclosed house that had been empty for 8 months. Public records showed it belonged to a shell company registered in Delaware, a dead end designed to frustrate casual investigation. But Tyler wasn't casual, and he had resources that went well beyond public records. A call to Harvey Potter, his former military intelligence colleague, now working as a private investigator, yielded more promising information. Harvey had maintained his security clearances and connections within the intelligence community, making him invaluable for situations requiring discretion and unofficial assistance. The shell company connects to a network of holding companies owned by Dennis Stewart, Harvey reported during their secure video call. Ring any bells? Tyler's jaw tightened. Dennis Stewart. He remembered the name, though it took a moment to place it in context. 3 years ago, Tyler had been contracted by the Department of Defense to investigate a security breach at a military contractor facility. Stewart had been the facility's IT director, and Tyler's investigation had uncovered evidence of Stewart selling classified information to foreign agents. The case had ended with Stewart facing federal charges for espionage, though he'd ultimately plea bargained down to lesser charges due to prosecutorial concerns about revealing sensitive intelligence methods. Stewart had served 18 months in a minimum security facility and been released 2 years ago. Looks like someone holds a grudge, Harvey said. But this seems elaborate for simple revenge. My sources say Stewart's been busy since his release, building connections with some very unsavory people. Arms dealers, human traffickers, mercenaries. Word is he's trying to rebuild his reputation in certain circles by proving he can handle personal business professionally. Tyler processed this information. If Stewart was using Tyler's family as a demonstration of his capabilities to potential criminal clients, the situation was far more dangerous than simple revenge. Stewart needed to make an impression, which meant escalation was inevitable. There's something else, Harvey continued. Stewart's been asking questions about you through intermediaries. Your daily routine, your family schedule, your home's security measures. He's been planning this for months. That night, Tyler prepared for the 3:17 a.m. visitation with military precision. Instead of waiting in his bedroom, he positioned himself in the abandoned house's backyard, armed with night vision equipment and a range of less-than-legal surveillance devices. If Stewart or his associates were using the property as a base of operations, Tyler intended to capture them in the act. At exactly 3:15 a.m., a panel van approached the house from the rear access road. Tyler watched through his night vision scope as two figures emerged, a thin man matching Stewart's description and a larger companion who moved with the deliberate precision of professional muscle. They carried a sophisticated array of electronic equipment into the house. Through his directional microphone, Tyler listened as they set up their operation. Signal strength looks good. Stewart's voice was unmistakable, carrying the same arrogant tone Tyler remembered from their previous encounter. The enhanced psychological warfare protocol should really mess with his head tonight. By the time we're finished with Phase 1, he'll be jumping at shadows. What about the family? The larger man asked in a gravelly voice. They're the leverage for Phase 2. Once Moss is mentally compromised, we grab them. Nothing focuses a man's attention like his wife and daughter in immediate danger. Tyler's blood ran cold. This wasn't just about him. Stewart planned to use Megan and Emma as pawns in whatever game he was playing. The smart move would be to call in Harvey and official law enforcement. Let the system handle Stewart through proper channels. But Tyler knew how the system worked. Evidence gathered through illegal surveillance would be inadmissible. Stewart's lawyers would find procedural errors, demand warrant reviews, challenge the chain of custody. Meanwhile, Stewart would remain free to target Tyler's family. And given Stewart's connections to international criminals, he might disappear entirely before facing justice. No, Tyler had tried the official route once before, and it had only delayed Stewart's revenge by a few years. This time, he would handle the situation personally. As Stewart and his partner activated their equipment, a high-power transmitter designed to inject the disturbing static into Tyler's doorbell camera, Tyler made his decision. He circled around to the house's front entrance, using lockpicks acquired during his intelligence work to gain silent entry. The house's interior was dusty and empty except for Stewart's electronic equipment. Tyler moved through the darkness like a ghost, his military training making him virtually invisible even to trained observers. He positioned himself in the hallway leading to the room where Stewart was working, close enough to hear every word but still concealed in shadow. Phase 2 begins tomorrow night, Stewart was explaining to his companion. We grab the family during their normal evening routine. Moss will do anything to get them back, including transferring his entire bank account to our offshore accounts. After that, we eliminate all three of them and make it look like a home invasion gone wrong. Tyler had heard enough. He activated a small device Harvey had provided, a cellular signal jammer that would prevent Stewart from calling for help or triggering any remote alarms. Then he began his own psychological warfare campaign. The first indication Stewart had that something was wrong came when his equipment began malfunctioning. Tyler, working from his cybersecurity expertise, had identified the transmitter's control frequency and was now flooding it with interference from a compact device he'd positioned outside. What the hell? Stewart muttered, frantically adjusting controls as his carefully calibrated system descended into chaos. Tyler's voice emerged from the darkness, calm and controlled. Hello, Dennis. I think it's time we had a talk. Chapter 3. The Hunter Becomes Hunted. Stewart spun around, his face pale in the glow of his malfunctioning equipment. His companion, a thick-set man with prison tattoos covering his neck, immediately reached for a pistol holstered beneath his jacket. Tyler's voice stopped him cold. "I wouldn't recommend that, Marcus." Tyler had identified the man through facial recognition software. Marcus Vale, a former enforcer for organized crime families who'd served time for assault and battery. "I have a rifle trained on you through the window, and my finger's getting itchy." It was a bluff, but Marcus hesitated long enough for Tyler to capitalize on the psychological advantage. In the darkness, the two men couldn't see Tyler clearly, couldn't assess his position or capabilities. Fear of the unknown was always more powerful than fear of the visible. "Tyler Moss," Stewart said, attempting to regain control of the situation. "I was hoping we'd get a chance to catch up. You cost me everything 3 years ago. My career, my reputation, my freedom. I've been looking forward to returning the favor." "Your choices cost you everything," Tyler replied, stepping partially into the light so the two men could see his face but not his full position. "I just documented them. But I'm curious about something, Dennis. Why the elaborate psychological warfare? Why not just come at me directly?" Stewart's laugh was bitter and humorless. "Because I wanted you to understand what helplessness feels like. I wanted you to experience the slow dissolution of everything you thought was secure, just like I did. Fear, paranoia, the gradual realization that you can't protect what matters most. That was just the beginning. And now, my clients get to see how I handle personal business. Your family's disappearance will be very public, very mysterious, and very permanent. The kind of demonstration that builds reputation in certain circles." Tyler felt a cold fury building in his chest, but his voice remained steady. "There's just one problem with your plan, Dennis. You're not the only one who learned new skills over the past few years." Tyler activated a small remote control in his pocket. Instantly, the house's electrical system came to life, not the standard power grid, but an emergency lighting system Tyler had installed earlier that day during his reconnaissance. Brilliant LED arrays flooded the room with blinding white light, destroying the two men's night vision advantage while leaving Tyler, who'd been expecting the activation, largely unaffected. Marcus, blinded and disoriented, pulled his weapon anyway. It was the last mistake he'd ever make. Tyler's years of combat training took over, and he moved with lethal efficiency. A throwing knife, one of several concealed on his person, caught Marcus in the throat before the larger man could acquire a target. Stewart, seeing his hired muscle collapse in a pool of blood, began backing toward the rear door. "You can't kill me, Moss. I have associates who know where I am. If I don't check in." "You mean Carlos Mendez and the Arroyo cartel?" Tyler's voice was conversational, as if discussing the weather. "Or perhaps the Bratva connections you've been cultivating through Viktor Kozlov. I've been busy too, Dennis. Your associates are going to have a very bad week." Stewart's face went white. "That's impossible. You can't know about. I know everything about your operation. The offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. The safe house in Montreal. The weapons cache you've been building in preparation for your demonstration. I know about Linda Maddox, too." The mention of Linda's name hit Stewart like a physical blow. She was his inside contact at Ring's technical support division, the one who'd been providing him with detailed information about Tyler's home security system. Stewart had thought that connection was completely secure. "Linda's been very helpful," Tyler continued, "especially after I explained to her what you were really planning with the information she'd been providing. Corporate espionage is one thing, but accessories to kidnapping and murder? That carries a very different sentence." Stewart was now pressed against the wall, trapped between Tyler and the rear door he couldn't reach without exposing his back. "What do you want, Moss?" "Justice. The kind that doesn't get delayed by lawyers and technicalities. You can't just execute me. You're not a vigilante. You're law enforcement." "Actually, I'm retired military handling a clear and present danger to my family. The legal framework is surprisingly flexible when national security consultants encounter terrorist threats." Tyler pulled out his phone and showed Stewart the screen. It displayed a recording of Stewart's earlier conversation about kidnapping Megan and Emma. This constitutes a credible threat against civilians by an individual with established connections to international criminal organizations. The Patriot Act provides considerable latitude for response to such threats. Stewart's legs seemed to give out, and he slid down the wall into a sitting position. Jesus Christ, Moss. What did you become? Exactly what I needed to become to protect my family. For the next hour, Tyler methodically extracted information from Stewart about his entire operation. The names of his contacts, the location of his resources, the details of his planned assault on Tyler's family. Stewart, faced with the choice between cooperation and immediate death, proved remarkably forthcoming. By dawn, Tyler had a complete picture of the threat against his family. Stewart's operation was larger than he'd initially believed. A network of disgruntled former military and intelligence personnel who'd turned to criminal activities after leaving government service. They'd been using Stewart's vendetta against Tyler as a testing ground for new techniques in intimidation, kidnapping, and elimination. Here's what's going to happen, Tyler told Stewart as the sun began filtering through the abandoned house's dirty windows. You're going to make some phone calls. You're going to tell your associates that the operation is canceled, that you've had a change of heart about targeting civilian families. You're going to transfer all operational funds to accounts I specify. And then you're going to disappear. And if I refuse? Tyler gestured to Marcus's corpse. Self-defense against an armed intruder. Very tragic, but perfectly legal. Of course, if you refuse my generous offer, you might suffer the same fate as your friend there. Stewart looked at the body of his hired muscle, then back at Tyler's cold, determined expression. You've changed, Moss. The man who investigated me 3 years ago wouldn't have done this. The man I was 3 years ago didn't have a family to protect. Evolution is a wonderful thing, Dennis. The question is whether you're smart enough to evolve with changing circumstances or stupid enough to become extinct. Stewart reached for his phone with shaking hands. Tyler had won the first battle, but he knew the war was far from over. Stewart's associates wouldn't simply forget about their investment in this operation, and Tyler's methods had crossed lines that couldn't be uncrossed. But as he listened to Stewart make the calls that would dismantle the immediate threat to his family, Tyler felt no regret. Some lines were meant to be crossed when everything that mattered hung in the balance. The hunter had become the hunted, but Tyler Moss was a very dangerous prey. Chapter 4. The Network Unravels. 3 days later, Tyler sat in his home office monitoring multiple intelligence feeds while Megan and Emma remained safely hidden at her sister's house. Stewart's phone calls had bought them temporary respite, but Tyler's analysis of the intercepted communications revealed a disturbing truth. Stewart's operation was just one tentacle of a larger criminal network that wouldn't simply abandon their investment because of one man's change of heart. Harvey Potter arrived that morning with intelligence that confirmed Tyler's worst fears. Stewart's dead, he announced without preamble, settling into the chair across from Tyler's desk. Found in his hotel room this morning with 2 bullets in the back of his head. Professional execution, no witnesses. Tyler felt no satisfaction at the news. Stewart's death meant his former associates had decided to eliminate loose ends rather than abandon their operation. Who found him? Hotel staff. No cameras in that section of the building. Stewart specifically requested a room in the security dead zone. His killers knew exactly where to find him and how to avoid detection. Any leads on who's running the operation now? Harvey pulled out a tablet loaded with surveillance photos and intercepted communications. Meet Oscar Berger, former NSA analyst turned freelance intelligence broker. According to my sources, he's been building a network of discharged military and intelligence personnel for hire by organized crime syndicates. Tyler studied Berger's file. The man was younger than Stewart, maybe early 30s, with the pale complexion and soft build of someone who'd spent his career behind desks rather than in field operations. But his intelligence credentials were impressive. He'd been involved in some of the NSA's most sophisticated cyber warfare programs before being quietly dismissed for policy disagreements. Berger's operation is much more sophisticated than Stewart's revenge fantasy, Harvey continued. They've been contracted by the Kozlov organization to field test new techniques for intimidating and eliminating targets in American suburbs. The idea is to develop methods that appear random or accidental, allowing for large-scale operations without attracting federal attention. And my family is their proof of concept. Exactly. Berger doesn't care about Stewart's personal vendetta. He cares about proving his methods work. That makes him more dangerous because he's not emotionally invested in the outcome. This is just business to him. Tyler leaned back in his chair, processing the implications. An enemy motivated by emotion could be manipulated, distracted, or reasoned with. An enemy motivated purely by professional considerations was far more difficult to predict or counter. What's his next move? According to intercepts, he's moving to direct action. No more psychological warfare. Berger considers that phase of the operation complete. He's bringing in a specialist team to acquire your family for leverage while simultaneously preparing to eliminate you. Tyler's blood ran cold. Timeline: 48 to 72 hours. Maybe less if he decides to accelerate the schedule after Stewart's death. Tyler stood and walked to his safe, removing additional weapons and equipment. Then we need to move first. What do you know about his operational setup? Harvey consulted his tablet. Berger's established a command center in an industrial complex about 20 miles from here. Former furniture manufacturing facility that's been empty for 2 years. He's got at least 6 operatives with military backgrounds, plus technical support staff and local contractors for surveillance and logistics. Sounds like a small army. It is, but they're expecting to fight a scared suburban dad, not someone with your background and resources. Tyler smiled grimly. Time to adjust their expectations. Over the next 12 hours, Tyler and Harvey implemented a plan that would have impressed their former intelligence colleagues. Using a combination of cyber warfare techniques and old-fashioned reconnaissance, they mapped Berger's entire operation down to individual personnel schedules and equipment inventories. The key insight came from analyzing Berger's communications patterns. The man was brilliant at technical operations, but had a critical weakness: arrogance. He consistently underestimated local law enforcement and civilian capabilities, assuming that superior technology and professional training would overwhelm any opposition. Tyler intended to use that arrogance against him. The first phase of the counterattack began at sunset. Tyler infiltrated Berger's operational perimeter using skills learned during his military service, while Harvey coordinated with selected contacts in federal law enforcement. The plan was to simultaneously destroy Berger's technical capabilities while providing evidence of his criminal activities to authorities who could act on that information legally. Tyler's infiltration revealed that Berger's setup was indeed impressive. Military-grade communications equipment, sophisticated surveillance systems, and enough firepower to outfit a small invasion force. But it also revealed a critical vulnerability. Berger's entire operation depended on centralized command and control systems that could be compromised by someone with Tyler's cybersecurity expertise. Working from a concealed position within the facility's abandoned office section, Tyler began systematically infiltrating Berger's networks. His first target was the communications system that coordinated Berger's field operatives. A few carefully crafted virus programs began corrupting data, scrambling frequencies, and introducing false information into the command structure. Within 2 hours, Berger's operation was descending into chaos. Field teams were receiving conflicting orders, surveillance systems were reporting phantom targets, and a secure communications network was broadcasting sensitive information on frequencies monitored by federal agencies. But Tyler's real masterstroke was more subtle. Using his access to Berger's systems, he planted evidence of a much larger criminal conspiracy: weapons trafficking, money laundering, connections to international terrorist organizations. All fictional, but convincing enough to trigger immediate federal intervention when combined with the legitimate evidence of Berger's planned assault on Tyler's family. By midnight, Berger's command center was surrounded by FBI tactical teams responding to what they believed was an imminent terrorist attack on civilian targets. The evidence Tyler had planted, combined with the real communications intercepts Harvey had provided to his federal contacts, painted Berger's operation as a clear national security threat requiring immediate action. Tyler watched through night vision scopes as federal agents stormed the facility. Most of Berger's operatives surrendered immediately, recognizing that resistance against overwhelming federal force would only add to their eventual sentences. But Berger himself managed to escape during the initial confusion, slipping away through a maintenance tunnel Tyler hadn't identified during his reconnaissance. "Son of a bitch is gone," Harvey reported through their secure communications link. "Federal agents are securing the facility, but Berger's in the wind." Tyler wasn't surprised. Men like Berger always had escape plans, and his intelligence background meant he knew how to disappear effectively. But Tyler also knew that a man on the run had limited options and predictable needs. "He'll try to reach his international contacts," Tyler replied. "Probably through the network of safe houses he's established for situations like this. But he'll need resources first: money, new identity documents, transportation. That means he'll have to access assets he's cached locally. Can you track him?" Tyler smiled as he monitored the data streams flowing from Berger's compromised computers. "I don't need to track him. I know exactly where he's going." During his infiltration of Berger's systems, Tyler had discovered something the man probably didn't realize he'd revealed: the location of his emergency cache. Financial records, encrypted communication logs, and surveillance footage had all pointed to a storage facility where Berger kept resources for exactly this kind of emergency. Tyler was already moving toward that location when Berger's operational command center erupted in federal law enforcement activity. This wasn't over. It was just entering the final phase. And Tyler intended to be waiting when Berger arrived to collect his escape resources. Chapter 5: The Trap Springs. The storage facility sat in an industrial district that had seen better days, surrounded by abandoned warehouses and empty lots where weeds pushed through cracked asphalt. Tyler arrived 2 hours before dawn, giving himself time to establish surveillance and prepare for Berger's inevitable arrival. Unit 247 was located in the facility's most isolated section, accessed through a service road that provided multiple escape routes. Exactly what Tyler would have chosen for a cache location. Using equipment borrowed from Harvey's private investigation arsenal, Tyler confirmed the unit contained exactly what Berger's financial records had suggested: cash, weapons, forged documents, and communication equipment necessary for a professional disappearance. Tyler positioned himself in a vacant unit directly across from Berger's cache, settling in to wait with the patience learned during countless military operations. The storage facility security was minimal. A few cameras focused on the main entrance, a part-time security guard who spent most of his shift sleeping in the office. Perfect for someone who needed to access resources without official attention. Berger arrived just before sunrise, driving a stolen sedan and moving with the nervous energy of a man whose carefully constructed world had just collapsed. Tyler watched through a directional microphone as Berger worked frantically to access his emergency supplies, muttering to himself about federal incompetence and amateur local law enforcement. "Should have stayed in Moscow," Berger was saying as he stuffed cash into a duffel bag. "American operations are too unpredictable, too many variables. Kozlov's going to have my head for this disaster." Tyler smiled grimly. Berger's commentary was providing valuable intelligence about his organization's structure and international connections. Information that would be very useful to federal authorities, assuming Tyler decided to share it through official channels. But as Tyler listened to Berger's plans for escape and eventual revenge against everyone who had interfered with his operation, he realized that official channels might not be sufficient. Berger was already planning his next attempt on Tyler's family, discussing methods that would be even more sophisticated and harder to detect. The man had learned from this failure and intended to apply those lessons to future operations. Tyler made his decision. As Berger prepared to leave with his emergency supplies, Tyler activated a small device he'd placed near the storage unit's entrance. The device was simple: a cellular signal jammer that would prevent Berger from calling for help, combined with a remote door lock that would trap him inside the unit. Berger's first indication that something was wrong came when his cell phone lost signal just as he tried to contact his international handlers. The second indication was the sound of the storage unit door slamming shut and refusing to reopen. "Hello, Oscar." Tyler's voice came from speakers he'd positioned inside the unit earlier. "I think it's time we discussed your future career plans." Berger spun around, weapon drawn, searching for Tyler's position. But Tyler was speaking from his concealed location across the facility, using equipment that made his voice appear to come from multiple directions simultaneously. "Tyler Moss, I presume. I have to admit, you've been more resourceful than our intelligence suggested. Stewart underestimated you significantly. Stewart made a lot of mistakes. The question is whether you're going to repeat them." Berger laughed, though Tyler could hear the strain in it. "I'm not some amateur seeking personal revenge. This is business, and business finds a way to adapt to changing circumstances. Even if you eliminate me, others will continue the operation. Your family remains a valuable asset for demonstrating our capabilities." "That's where you're wrong, Oscar. See, while you were building your little demonstration project, I was building something too. A comprehensive file documenting your entire network. Names, locations, financial structures, operational methodologies. Everything federal authorities would need to dismantle your organization completely." Tyler activated a tablet that displayed images of Berger's associates, financial records, and communication intercepts. The information was far more detailed than anything Berger had believed possible. "Impressive," Berger admitted, studying the displayed information. "But intelligence is only valuable if it reaches the right people. Kill me, and that information disappears with any hope of protecting your family long-term. You're assuming I need you alive to share that information. But here's the thing about electronic files. They can be programmed to transmit automatically under certain conditions. If I don't check in every 12 hours, everything I've compiled gets sent to every relevant federal agency simultaneously." Berger's face went pale as the implications sank in. "A dead man's switch. You're more professional than I gave you credit for. I learned from the best. 3 tours in Afghanistan, cybersecurity work with DoD, dealing with people who thought they were smarter than everyone else. Sound familiar?" Tyler paused, letting Berger fully grasp his situation. "Here's what's going to happen, Oscar. You're going to provide me with additional information about your network. The details I haven't been able to compile independently. International contacts, pending operations, financial structures. Everything. And in exchange, I'll make sure the federal investigation focuses on your network's criminal activities rather than potential terrorism charges. The difference between 20 years and life in prison." Berger was quiet for several minutes, weighing his options. Tyler could see him through the surveillance camera he'd placed in the storage unit, pacing back and forth like a caged animal. Finally, professional pragmatism won over personal pride. "What specific information do you want?" For the next 3 hours, Tyler systematically extracted intelligence about Berger's organization that would have taken federal authorities months to develop through traditional investigation. Names, locations, operational procedures, financial records, everything needed to dismantle a sophisticated criminal network. But Tyler's real objective was more specific, identifying and eliminating any ongoing threats to his family. Berger's information revealed that the operation against Tyler had been just one of several similar projects designed to field test new techniques. Other families in other cities were facing the same kind of psychological warfare and planned abduction that had targeted Tyler's household. "How many other operations are currently active?" Tyler demanded. 6. Berger replied reluctantly. "Phoenix, Denver, Atlanta, Richmond, Portland, and Minneapolis. All targeting families of former military or intelligence personnel who've interfered with our clients' interests." Tyler felt sick. His family's nightmare was being replicated across the country, with other families facing the same terror he'd experienced. The thought of other children like Emma living in fear because of these criminals' experiments filled him with cold fury. "Those operations end today," Tyler said. "You're going to contact your field teams and abort all active projects. Every single one." "Impossible. I don't have that level of authority anymore." After this morning's disaster, control has passed to our international supervisors. They're not going to abandon 6 active operations because one test subject proved more resourceful than expected. Tyler had expected this response. Berger's organization was too sophisticated to collapse because of one man's capture. But Tyler had prepared for that contingency as well. Then we'll have to convince them that continuing these operations is too dangerous to their long-term interests. Tyler activated another device, this one connected to Berger's own communication equipment. Using protocols he'd extracted from Berger's systems, Tyler began broadcasting false reports about federal law enforcement activities targeting the entire network. Raids, arrests, asset seizures, international law enforcement cooperation. All fictional, but reported through channels and in language that would be completely convincing to Berger supervisors. Within an hour, Tyler's phantom federal investigation had grown into an international crisis from the perspective of Berger's organization. Faced with what appeared to be coordinated law enforcement action across multiple countries, the criminal network began implementing emergency protocols, shutting down operations, evacuating personnel, destroying evidence. "You magnificent bastard," Berger said, watching Tyler's deception unfold through his own communication channels. "You're single-handedly destroying an operation that took years to build." "I'm protecting families from monsters," Tyler replied coldly. "The fact that it's destroying your criminal enterprise is just a bonus." As dawn gave way to morning, Tyler watched Berger's network collapse like a house of cards built on criminal sand. The false reports of federal action became self-fulfilling prophecies as the organization's panic-driven responses attracted real law enforcement attention. By noon, actual federal agencies were investigating activities they'd initially known nothing about. Tyler's gambit had worked beyond his most optimistic expectations. But now he faced a new challenge: what to do with Berger himself. The man possessed too much knowledge to simply release, but killing him in cold blood would make Tyler no better than the criminals he'd been fighting. The solution came from an unexpected source: Harvey Potter, arriving at the storage facility with several men Tyler didn't recognize. "Federal marshals," Harvey explained as the men secured Berger. "Turns out your phantom investigation triggered some real ones. These gentlemen have been very interested in meeting Mr. Berger for some time." As federal agents led Berger away, Tyler felt a complex mixture of satisfaction and exhaustion. The immediate threat to his family had been eliminated, but the cost had been higher than he'd anticipated. He'd crossed lines, made enemies, and used methods that couldn't be undone or forgotten. But Emma would sleep safely in her own bed tonight, and that made every compromise worthwhile. Chapter 6: Ghosts and Consequences. 2 weeks after Berger's arrest, Tyler sat in a secure conference room at the FBI's field office, facing 3 federal agents who were trying to reconcile their official investigation with the evidence Tyler had provided. The room was windowless and sterile, designed to make suspects uncomfortable during interrogation. But Tyler wasn't a suspect. Technically, he was a cooperative witness helping to unravel an international criminal conspiracy. Agent Kara Middleton, the lead investigator, was reviewing Tyler's statement for the 3rd time. A veteran of organized crime investigations, she possessed the kind of sharp intelligence that missed nothing and trusted even less. "Your story is remarkably convenient, Mr. Moss," she said, not looking up from her files. "You discovered this conspiracy, infiltrated their operations, and single-handedly provided evidence that led to the arrest of 12 individuals across 6 states, all while protecting your family and staying within legal boundaries." Tyler met her skeptical gaze steadily. "I got lucky. These people underestimated civilian capabilities and made critical operational security mistakes." "Lucky?" Agent Middleton's tone suggested she found that explanation insufficient. "You extracted intelligence that would have taken our analysts months to develop, executed cyber warfare operations that required significant technical expertise, and coordinated activities across multiple jurisdictions with precision that suggests extensive planning and resources." Agent Benjamin Sloan, Middleton's partner, leaned forward. We've been investigating Berger's network for 8 months without achieving a fraction of what you accomplished in 2 weeks. That's not luck. That's professional capability at a level that raises questions about your background and motivations. Tyler had expected this line of questioning. His cooperation with federal authorities had been necessary to eliminate the ongoing threat to his family, but it had also exposed him to official scrutiny that could complicate his future. The methods he'd used to defeat Berger's network weren't all strictly legal, and federal agents were trained to identify such discrepancies. I have a cybersecurity background and military training, Tyler replied. When someone threatened my family, I used every resource available to protect them. If that violated certain protocols, I accept responsibility for those decisions. Agent Middleton exchanged glances with her colleagues. Mr. Moss, we're not here to prosecute you for protecting your family. We're here because your actions suggest capabilities that could be very valuable to ongoing federal operations. Berger's network was part of a larger criminal organization that continues to threaten American citizens. Tyler felt a familiar weight settling on his shoulders. During his military service, he'd received similar recruitment pitches from intelligence agencies looking to leverage his skills for operations that existed in legal gray areas. He declined those opportunities then, choosing instead to build a normal life with his family. But his family's safety had been threatened by the same kind of criminal networks those agencies dealt with daily. The choice between normal life and necessary action had already been made for him. What kind of cooperation are you suggesting? Tyler asked. Agent Sloan pulled out a classified folder. Berger's organization was contracted by the Kozlov Syndicate to develop techniques for intimidating and eliminating targets in American suburban communities. Berger's arrest has disrupted their current operations, but hasn't eliminated the underlying threat. Kozlov is already working to replace Berger with someone more competent, and you wanted to help stop that. We want you to consider a consultancy arrangement, Agent Middleton said. Your methods were unorthodox, but they were effective. More importantly, you understand how these organizations think and operate. That perspective could be invaluable for protecting other families facing similar threats. Tyler looked out the conference room's single window, watching normal people going about their normal lives. 3 weeks ago, he'd been one of them, a suburban dad worried about nothing more serious than Emma's school grades and Megan's work schedule. Now he was being recruited to wage covert war against international criminal syndicates. I need to discuss this with my wife, Tyler said finally. Of course. But Mr. Moss, time is a factor. Kozlov's organization is accelerating their timeline to field test replacement operations. Other families are at risk. That evening, Tyler sat on his back porch with Megan, watching Emma play in their carefully maintained garden. The Ring doorbell that had started this nightmare now showed only normal activity. Neighbors walking dogs, delivery trucks, children riding bicycles. The suburban tranquility that had once been Tyler's greatest achievement now felt fragile and temporary. They want you to keep doing this, Megan said after Tyler explained the federal agent's proposition. It wasn't a question. They want me to help protect other families from what we went through. Megan was quiet for several minutes, processing the implications. As a pediatric nurse, she understood the weight of protecting innocents from those who would harm them. But she also understood the cost such protection extracted from those who provided it. If you do this, you can't be the same person you were before, she said eventually. The man who came home after dealing with Stewart and Berger. He's different from the man who installed that doorbell 3 months ago. Tyler nodded. He'd felt the change himself. A coldness that hadn't been there before, a willingness to cross lines that he'd once considered inviolable. The skills necessary to protect his family had required becoming someone harder, more dangerous, less concerned with legal niceties than with effective results. Emma needs her father, Megan continued. But other children need someone to protect them from the same monsters that threatened our daughter. I can't make this decision for you, Tyler. But I can tell you that whatever you choose, we'll face it together. Tyler felt a surge of love for his wife that was almost overwhelming. Another woman might have demanded that he walk away from danger, choose personal safety over public service. But Megan understood that some choices weren't really choices at all. They were moral imperatives that defined who a person truly was. The federal agents said Kozlov's organization is already working to replace Berger. Other families are going through what we went through. Then you know what you have to do. That night, Tyler called Agent Middleton and accepted their consultancy arrangement. The work would be dangerous, morally complex, and legally ambiguous. But somewhere in America, a family was receiving mysterious signals on their home security system, and children were waking up afraid in what should have been the safety of their own homes. Tyler Moss had discovered he possessed certain talents for protecting innocents from sophisticated predators. It wasn't the life he'd planned, but it was the life his choices had created. And given what he now knew about the threats facing ordinary families, it was a life he could live with. The suburban warrior was officially going to war. Chapter 7. The Kozlov Gambit. 6 months into his federal consultancy, Tyler had helped dismantle 3 more criminal operations and protected 14 families from organized intimidation campaigns. His methods had evolved, becoming more sophisticated as he learned to work within federal frameworks while maintaining the aggressive effectiveness that made him valuable to Agent Middleton's team. But the Kozlov organization had been learning too. The call came at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday in March. Tyler answered on the first ring, instantly alert despite having been deep asleep moments before, a skill developed during his military service and refined through months of federal operations. "We have a problem." Agent Middleton's voice was tense. "Kozlov's people have Emma." Tyler's world stopped. For a moment, he couldn't process the words, couldn't reconcile the impossible statement with reality. Emma was safe in her bedroom upstairs. Megan had tucked her in at 9 o'clock, read her favorite story about brave princesses and dragon slayers. "That's not possible," Tyler said, but he was already moving, padding silently down the hallway to Emma's room. "She's here. She's safe. We have security measures." Emma's bed was empty. The window was open, and Tyler's sophisticated alarm system showed no signs of intrusion. Professional work, executed with precision that spoke of extensive planning and intimate knowledge of Tyler's security arrangements. "Ow!" Tyler's voice was barely controlled fury. "Viktor Kozlov himself is in the United States. He's been planning this operation personally, using intelligence gathered over the past 6 months. Tyler, they know everything about your family, your methods, your federal connections. This isn't just revenge. It's a demonstration of their capabilities to potential clients." Tyler was already moving through his house, checking Megan's location, safe at the hospital working a night shift, confirming the status of his security systems. All appeared normal except for Emma's window, and beginning mental protocol for hostage rescue operations he'd hoped never to use. Demands: you in exchange for Emma. Personal meeting, no federal backup, no surveillance. Just you and Kozlov, settling business between professionals. Tyler understood immediately. Kozlov wasn't interested in ransom money or negotiated settlements. This was about reputation, about proving that no one, not federal agents, not suburban warriors, not protective fathers, could successfully challenge the Kozlov organization. Emma was bait for a trap designed to eliminate Tyler while publicly demonstrating Kozlov's power. Location: I'm sending you coordinates. Tyler, this is obviously a trap. We can't. Agent Middleton. Tyler's voice cut through her objections with absolute finality. They have my daughter. I'm going to get her back. The only question is whether you help me or I do this entirely alone. There was silence on the line for several seconds. Then, what do you need? Tyler spent the next hour preparing for what would likely be his final operation. Unlike his previous encounters with Berger and Stewart, this wasn't a situation where superior planning and technological advantages could guarantee success. Kozlov had chosen the battlefield, set the terms of engagement, and prepared extensively for Tyler's arrival. But Tyler had advantages too. 6 months of federal work had given him access to intelligence resources and technical equipment that Kozlov might not have anticipated. More importantly, Tyler was fighting for his daughter's life, a motivation that made him more dangerous than any professional soldier or criminal operative. Harvey Potter arrived as Tyler was loading equipment into his vehicle. His old military friend took one look at Tyler's expression and nodded grimly. "What's the plan?" Harvey asked without preamble. "There is no plan. This is a straight hostage exchange in hostile territory with overwhelming odds against success. I'm going to wing it and hope training beats luck." Harvey pulled out his own weapons and gear. "Sounds like my kind of operation." "Harvey, I can't ask you to." "You're not asking. I'm volunteering. Emma calls me Uncle Harvey, and uncles don't let little girls stay with monsters just because the odds are bad." The coordinates led to an abandoned industrial complex on the outskirts of the city, the kind of isolated location that provided multiple escape routes for hostiles while offering no cover or concealment for rescue attempts. Tyler and Harvey spent 30 minutes conducting surveillance from a distance, identifying at least 12 armed guards positioned around the perimeter. Professional setup, Harvey observed through binoculars. Military-trained personnel, overlapping fields of fire, sophisticated communications equipment. Kozlov's not taking any chances. Tyler studied the facility's layout, looking for weaknesses in what appeared to be an impregnable defensive position. Emma's probably being held in the central building, maximum distance from potential rescue approach routes. Kozlov will want to keep her close during negotiations to maintain psychological leverage. Negotiations? I don't think Kozlov intends to negotiate. This is an execution designed to look like a hostage exchange gone wrong. He gets to eliminate me while demonstrating his organization's capabilities to potential clients. Emma becomes collateral damage that reinforces his reputation for ruthlessness. Harvey nodded grimly. "So we don't negotiate. We go in hard and fast, eliminate hostiles, extract Emma, and sort out the legal complications later." Tyler appreciated his friend's loyalty, but the tactical situation was nearly hopeless. 12 professional guards in fortified positions against 2 attackers with limited ammunition and no backup. Even with their military training and superior motivation, the odds were overwhelming. But Tyler had spent 6 months learning that sometimes overwhelming odds could be overcome through unconventional methods and willingness to escalate beyond an enemy's expectations. "I have an idea," Tyler said, pulling out his phone. "But it's going to require federal resources and some very flexible interpretation of jurisdictional authority." Agent Middleton answered on the first ring. "Tyler, where are you?" "Close enough to see the target location. I need you to coordinate with local SWAT teams and prepare for a major federal operation. Multiple suspects, automatic weapons, possible explosives." "Tyler, we can't authorize a federal assault based on—" "Agent Middleton," Tyler interrupted, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had moved beyond caring about official protocols. "Viktor Kozlov is on American soil with a team of armed foreign nationals who have kidnapped an American child. This is officially an act of international terrorism, which gives you all the jurisdictional authority you need." Tyler could hear Agent Middleton consulting with her superiors in the background. Federal bureaucracy was notoriously slow, but the combination of international terrorism and child endangerment could accelerate decision-making processes dramatically. "How much time do you need?" she asked finally. Tyler checked his watch. Dawn was still 2 hours away. Optimal timing for a coordinated assault. 2 hours. And Agent Middleton? "When this starts, it's going to get very loud and very messy. Make sure your people are ready for that." As Tyler and Harvey prepared for what might be their final mission together, Tyler felt the familiar calm that preceded combat operations. Emma was depending on him, and Tyler Moss had never failed anyone who depended on him. Viktor Kozlov was about to learn why that perfect record was going to continue. Chapter 8, The Final Gambit. At exactly 4:30 a.m., Tyler walked alone toward the industrial complex's main entrance, his hands visible and empty as per Kozlov's instructions. Every step was monitored by hidden federal snipers positioned throughout the surrounding area, while Harvey coordinated tactical teams from a mobile command center half a mile away. But Tyler knew the real battle would be fought with psychology rather than bullets. Kozlov was too experienced to allow a simple tactical solution to succeed. He would have anticipated federal involvement and prepared countermeasures. Tyler's only advantage was that Kozlov expected him to be a desperate father making emotional decisions rather than a professional operator executing a carefully planned deception. The main building's entrance was flanked by two guards who searched Tyler thoroughly before escorting him inside. The industrial space had been converted into a sophisticated temporary command center, with surveillance equipment monitoring approaches to the facility and communication systems connecting to Kozlov's international network. Viktor Kozlov stood in the center of the space like a spider in his web, a tall, lean man in his 50s whose pale eyes held the kind of casual cruelty that came from decades of inflicting suffering without consequence. Emma sat in a chair beside him, her hands zip-tied and her face streaked with tears, but otherwise unharmed. "Mr. Tyler Moss," Kozlov said in accented English, "your reputation precedes you. My associates speak of you with considerable respect, though not necessarily affection." Tyler's eyes never left Emma, who was trying to be brave, but was clearly terrified. "Let her go, Kozlov. Your business is with me. Actually, my business is with the federal authorities who have been interfering with legitimate commercial activities. You're simply a convenient focal point for resolving certain jurisdictional disputes." Kozlov gestured to monitors showing surveillance feeds from around the facility. "I am aware that your friends are positioned outside. Federal agents, local SWAT teams, probably military snipers as well." Very impressive response to a simple business meeting. Tyler wasn't surprised that Kozlov had detected the federal presence. But the criminal leader's confidence suggested he had additional resources Tyler hadn't anticipated. Resources that might make the planned assault more costly than acceptable. "Here is what will happen," Kozlov continued. "You will contact Agent Middleton and order the withdrawal of all federal personnel. In exchange, I will allow your daughter to leave safely. You, however, will remain to discuss certain operational adjustments to federal policy regarding my organization. And if I refuse?" Kozlov pulled out a tablet showing video feeds from multiple locations around the city. Tyler's blood ran cold as he recognized several of them. Megan's hospital, Harvey's apartment building, Agent Middleton's home address. Refusal would have consequences extending well beyond this facility, Kozlov said calmly. "I have invested considerable resources in developing comprehensive intelligence about everyone connected to your federal operations. Your daughter is not my only leverage, merely the most emotionally compelling." Tyler felt the familiar cold fury building in his chest, but his voice remained steady. "You made a mistake coming here personally, Kozlov. Whatever happens to my family, you won't live to enjoy it." Kozlov laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Mr. Moss, I have survived 3 decades in a business where mistakes are typically fatal. Do you really believe a suburban father with military training poses a greater threat than the Russian mafia, Chechen separatists, or Colombian cartels? Those organizations had to worry about politics, territories, and profit margins," Tyler replied. "I just have to worry about my family. That makes me much more dangerous than anyone you've faced before." Tyler activated a small device concealed in his watch. Not a weapon or communication device, but a simple timer that had been counting down since he entered the building. Kozlov's confidence was about to be shattered by realities he hadn't considered. The first explosion came from the facility's power infrastructure, plunging the building into darkness while simultaneously disabling Kozlov's surveillance and communication systems. Tyler had spent hours studying the complex's electrical layout, identifying critical points where shaped charges could create maximum disruption with minimal risk to hostages. In the chaos that followed, Tyler's military training took over. Years of night operations had prepared him for exactly this kind of combat environment, moving through darkness while hostile forces struggled to adapt to changed circumstances. Emma's chair was exactly where Tyler had calculated it would be, and his daughter followed his whispered instructions perfectly, staying low, moving when he moved, trusting her father completely even in the midst of nightmare chaos. But Kozlov's men were professionals too, and they recovered from the initial surprise quickly. Automatic weapons fire filled the darkness as they attempted to eliminate Tyler while recapturing Emma. Tyler returned fire with surgical precision, each shot carefully aimed to avoid ricocheted dangers in a confined space. The second explosion came from outside the building. Harvey signaled that federal tactical teams were beginning their assault on the facility's perimeter. Kozlov had prepared for a negotiated settlement or a straight hostage exchange, but not for a coordinated deception operation that used multiple phases of escalation to overwhelm his defenses. As federal agents stormed the building, Tyler found himself in the kind of close-quarters combat he'd hoped never to experience on American soil. Kozlov's guards were fighting with the desperation of men who knew capture meant life imprisonment or worse, while Tyler fought with the focused intensity of a father protecting his child. The final confrontation came in the building's central corridor, where Kozlov himself waited with a pistol aimed at the space Tyler would have to cross to reach the exit with Emma. Even in the emergency lighting from federal tactical units, Tyler could see the criminal leader's expression of cold calculation. An impressive operation, Mr. Moss, but ultimately futile. Your daughter lives only as long as I find her useful as leverage against federal operations. Kill me, and she becomes a liability to be eliminated. Tyler stepped into the corridor, shielding Emma with his body. You're forgetting something, Kozlov. What? Tyler smiled grimly. I spent 6 months learning everything about your organization. Financial structures, operational procedures, personnel files, everything. And unlike your operation against my family, my intelligence gathering included comprehensive contingency planning. Tyler activated his phone, showing Kozlov a list of names, addresses, and photographs. Every member of your organization currently in the United States. Their locations, their activities, their connections to international criminal networks. All documented, all ready for transmission to federal authorities. Kozlov's eyes widened as he recognized the scope of Tyler's intelligence operation. Impossible. That information is compartmentalized, encrypted. Your people underestimated civilian cyber warfare capabilities. Again, Tyler's voice carried absolute conviction. Kill my daughter, and your entire American operation gets rolled up within 24 hours. Let her go, and you get to disappear back to whatever hole you crawled out of. For several seconds, Kozlov weighed his options while automatic weapons fire echoed from other parts of the building. His men were losing, federal tactical teams were establishing control, and his carefully planned demonstration of power was collapsing into a public relations disaster. Finally, professional pragmatism overcame personal pride. Kozlov lowered his weapon and stepped aside, allowing Tyler and Emma to pass toward the exit where federal agents waited to escort them to safety. This isn't over, Moss, Kozlov called after them. My organization has a long memory for those who interfere with our business. Tyler paused at the exit, still holding Emma protectively against his side. Actually, it is over. Because unlike your previous enemies, I don't have territories to defend or profits to protect. I just have a family to keep safe. And that means you and everyone like you stay as far away from us as possible. Tyler looked directly into Kozlov's eyes, letting the criminal leader see the absolute conviction there. Test that theory at your own risk. As federal agents led Kozlov away in handcuffs, Tyler finally allowed himself to breathe normally. Emma was safe, the immediate threat was eliminated, and his family could begin the process of returning to normal life. But Tyler knew that normalcy was a relative concept. He'd changed during this ordeal, become someone harder and more dangerous than the suburban father who'd installed a Ring doorbell 6 months earlier. The question now was whether that change would ultimately protect his family or destroy the peaceful life he'd fought so hard to preserve. Chapter 9. New Foundations. 3 months after Viktor Kozlov's arrest, Tyler sat in his home office reviewing the final reports from federal prosecutors. The Kozlov organization had been dismantled completely. 27 arrests across 6 countries, financial assets seized, and operational capabilities eliminated. Emma was sleeping peacefully in her own bed, and Megan had returned to her normal work schedule at the hospital. By all external measures, the Moss family had returned to suburban normalcy. But Tyler knew the deeper truth was more complicated. Emma was describing her school's safety protocols with the detailed knowledge of someone who understood that dangers existed beyond childish imagination. Megan was discussing her volunteer work with families who'd experienced trauma, using terminology that reflected hard-won understanding of psychological warfare's effects. And Tyler found himself analyzing their daily routines for security vulnerabilities even during casual family discussion. "Dad," Emma said as Megan cleared the dinner dishes, "are the bad people going to come back?" Tyler looked into his daughter's eyes, still innocent despite everything she'd experienced, still trusting despite having every reason for permanent fear. This was the question that haunted his nights and drove his continued preparation for threats that might never materialize. "I don't know, sweetheart, but I promise that if they do, we'll be ready for them." Emma nodded solemnly. "Because we're stronger than we were before." Tyler felt his heart break and swell simultaneously. His 8-year-old daughter had learned lessons about strength and survival that most adults never faced, but she'd learned them without losing her essential humanity. Perhaps that was the real victory, not the elimination of specific threats, but the preservation of family bonds strong enough to survive any challenge. Later that night, after Emma was asleep and Megan had gone to bed early after her volunteer shift, Tyler walked through his house, checking security systems and reviewing surveillance feeds. The routines that had once been paranoid preparation were now simply practical maintenance of the life he'd built for his family. His phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "Impressive work with Kozlov. Others are watching. Others are learning. Sleep well, suburban warrior." Tyler deleted the message and added the number to his monitoring systems. Somewhere in the darkness, new enemies were studying his methods and planning their own operations. The war for his family's safety would never truly end. It would just evolve into new forms requiring new responses. But Tyler had evolved too. The suburban father who'd installed a Ring doorbell to catch package thieves was gone, replaced by someone harder, more dangerous, and infinitely more protective of everything that mattered. Tyler Moss checked the locks one final time, armed the security systems, and headed upstairs to his family. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new threats, new opportunities to prove that some lines should never be crossed. And Tyler would be ready for whatever came next. In Emma's bedroom, he paused to watch his daughter sleeping peacefully, her face relaxed in the kind of trust that children should be able to take for granted. She'd grown stronger through their ordeal, but she'd retained her essential innocence, proof that some victories were worth any cost. Tyler smiled as he closed Emma's door. Let new enemies study his methods and plan their operations. They would find him ready, willing, and more dangerous than anyone who threatened his family could possibly imagine. The Ring doorbell might have started this nightmare, but Tyler Moss had ended it on his own terms. And those terms would apply to any future threats foolish enough to test his resolve. The suburban warrior was home, and his family was safe. Everything else was just details waiting to be resolved. Emma now woke up sometimes at night, not from doorbell chimes, but from dreams she couldn't quite remember. She developed a habit of checking locks and security cameras before going to bed, behaviors that broke Tyler's heart even as he recognized their practicality. The innocence that had been stolen from his daughter could never be fully recovered. Megan had thrown herself into her work with an intensity that spoke of her own processing of trauma. She'd started volunteering with organizations that helped children who'd experienced violence, channeling her protective instincts into professional service. But Tyler sometimes caught her watching Emma with an expression of fierce vigilance that hadn't been there before their ordeal. And Tyler himself had discovered that some transformations were permanent. The federal consultancy had officially ended with Kozlov's conviction, but Agent Middleton continued to call occasionally with intelligence about emerging threats to civilian families. Tyler found himself unable to ignore those calls, unable to return to a purely personal existence, when he knew monsters were still hunting innocents. The Ring doorbell had been replaced with a more sophisticated security system, but Tyler often found himself checking its feeds with the hypervigilance of someone who'd learned that safety was an illusion maintained through constant preparation. That morning, Harvey Potter arrived for their weekly coffee meeting, a tradition they'd established to help each other process their experiences and maintain their friendship despite the violence they'd shared. "Any word from our federal friends?" Harvey asked, settling into his usual chair on Tyler's back porch. Agent Middleton called yesterday. They're tracking indications that Kozlov's arrest created a power vacuum that's attracting attention from other criminal organizations. Nothing direct, but she wanted me aware of potential developments. Harvey nodded. Both men understood that Tyler's success against sophisticated criminal networks had created a reputation that would attract both admiration and hostility from similar organizations. The price of protecting his family might be a lifetime of vigilance against those who saw him as either a threat or a challenge. Emma seems to be doing better, Harvey observed, watching Tyler's daughter play in the backyard with the kind of carefree energy that had been missing for months. She is, but she's different now. More aware, more careful. Sometimes I wonder if we saved her childhood or just extended it temporarily. You save her life, Tyler. Everything else is details we can work through together. Tyler appreciated his friend's perspective, but he couldn't shake the feeling that their victory had come at costs they were still discovering. The methods he'd used to defeat Stewart, Berger, and Kozlov had required crossing lines that couldn't be uncrossed. He'd become someone capable of violence and deception at levels that would have horrified the man he'd been before this started. That afternoon, Agent Middleton called with news that crystallized Tyler's concerns about the future. We've received intelligence indicating that your success against the Kozlov organization has attracted attention from several other criminal networks, she reported. Nothing immediate, but they're studying your methods and developing countermeasures. Some are also exploring whether your family might represent valuable leverage for operations against federal law enforcement. Tyler felt the familiar cold fury building. Are you telling me this is going to happen again? I'm telling you that your actions have consequences beyond the specific threats you eliminated. You've become a symbol of civilian resistance to organized crime, which makes you both an inspiration and a target. Tyler understood. His choice to fight back against criminals targeting his family had made him a public figure in circles where such attention was extremely dangerous. Other families facing similar threats might look to his example for hope, but criminal organizations would study his methods to develop countermeasures and identify vulnerabilities. That evening, Tyler sat with Megan and Emma around their dinner table, the kind of normal family scene he'd fought so hard to preserve. But the conversation revealed how much their definition of normal had changed. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.